So I found the craziest Corsa B project. This is a rear-wheel drive Omega floorpan V6 converted Corsa B. But there was one problem. This is the next adventure. This is not going to be easy to pull out. This was abandoned 20 years ago. It was full of moss, mould, rust and rot. So I made it my mission to get this out, get it back on the road so I can do some donuts. As you will have seen in the very beginning of the Corsa rear-wheel drive build, the wiring loom, the ECU, basically all the electronics package was scrap. Full of water, no use, no ornament, and that was always going to be the issue. So I've had to go and buy a complete car. So let me show you what we've bought. So we've bought basically a Vauxhall Omega Elite, but it is a 3-litre V6. It's been stood a while. This is me taking this off so I can get to the battery and put a battery on. It's been stood a long while, a long while. Engine's got full compression. It's still the easier one to use because it's not drive-by-wire. It's still on throttle cable. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the full engine, subframes, shockers, brakes, the full lot off this. Once I've got it running, because I think it just needs fuel and a battery by the looks of things plugging it in. The thing it was coming up on the code reader was 31, no RPM signal. Now what I can find with that is normally on the earlier cars, 31 is basically no RPM signal because the car's not spinning over. But I thought it's cranking, there's no other faults. Let's throw the crank sensor off the rear wheel drive one and let's have a look at this. Fire her up. Yeah, baby! Twin V6. So we've got this engine, which is obviously the 3-litre, and we've got the original 2.5. And again, as I've said, this is a package now that we know what runs. Starts up, runs, it drives. Everything as it's there in that box, technically, should run on its own. This one, still the unknown, hence us just kind of going, there's no point. But as you can see, there isn't very much difference between the two engines. 2.5, 3-litre, there's hardly anything between them. But there is one thing we need to do with this, whilst it's in this state before we actually put it into the bay, is we need to shred down the wiring loom. Because with this being an automatic engine, and this was a manual engine, as in gearbox, there is a lot of the loom which isn't needed, which is inside all the trunkings, here, there, and a few bits here and everywhere, which control the gearbox, which we don't need to be able to even see. So whilst it's in this state, I'm going to get rid of it. So this is obviously the ECU, and these are the group of wires which are coming out the ECU to various places and need various feeds for the ECU to run. So as we were talking about the blue wire, the blue multi-plug, all them are no use, no ornament, because they would run off to the gearbox, so chase them out the loom, they don't go to the ECU, so they can technically go in the bin, because they don't need, the ECU doesn't need them to run. Don't be scared by a rat's nest. It's called just taking your time, working through it, and like you say, I've binned a load of wiring here already and plugs and all sorts of stuff. It makes you, the couple of hours here will make your life in the future when putting it in the vehicle so much easier. So I'm trying to find out what this plug does, where it goes, what the wires are, because obviously there might be something important I've got to splice into. So I've wrote down all the colours on that plug. I've wrote my piece of paper, black square plug, and I'm going to look at the black and the white wire, which is that one there. Put my tester in, get the other side, and then I'm going to count on the multi-plug of the ECU which number it is, write it down, and then I can refer back to the wiring diagram online or Haynes or whatever and see what that wire does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 11, 12, 13, 14, 39, 40, 41. 41 is that one. So the black and the white is 41. And there you go. That basically means that that wire there goes to that pin on the ECU. So I can go now to the wiring diagram online and see what pin 41 does. That'll tell me what that does on that plug. Pin 41 is there on the ECU. Just zoom in a little bit. 41, which is, should say there, a black and a white, and it goes to the AC connector. So technically I can put on my list now aircon, and it's not needed, and I can work through this, work through the wiring diagram and work through that loom and then we'll know what every connectors do, and then when I'm wiring it in the car, I know we ain't using air conditioning, so that wire's not needed, it can be cut out. And that's how we can work through it all and get it to the point of it's a bare bone loom. Everything's now back in loom tape, as you can see, all loom taped up. So what we have is, we had the 3 plugs from memory, if you can remember. We had the brown one. So the brown one is all the alternator, starter motor, the lives, the activator wires, you know, and an earth. So we can get the plug off the Omega, put that on, feed it all into the car, into the ignition barrel where it needs to go. The blue was the automatic transmission box. We've been left with, you know, a couple of wires which actually go to the ECU, which from memory, one goes to an earth, one's left off, but I've left it in just in case. And then we've got this one, which I actually think is the reverse light wire. So again, I can utilize this plug, make it look nice and neat, make it look factory in the bay. And then we go to the big white one. The big white one, as a thought, is, like you say, the dash temperature, rev counter, part of the immobilizer system. So I can now take the 3 plugs off the car, get the other side, and then make standalone looms so it all plugs in and looks factory. But that's it, obviously. Now, it all shredded, it all back in, all plugged on. Everything's looking neat and tidy. It's ready now, I think, to take the torque converter off, swap it over for the brand new clutch and flywheel off the manual engine which came out the Corsa. Then I can paint the engine bay and finally get this in there. Well, that was harder than what I thought. Wow. Normally on a rear wheel drive box, you can normally get them in and fiddle them in and wiggle them in the bay. Unfortunately, what this one was having the issue of, there's a spigot bearing in the end of the crankshaft, and it's a super tight fit on the end of the gearbox. So what I had to do was, I had to remove the box, put the engine on its mounts, take the rear prop off, lift the box in, put the rear prop on. But within, she's solid enough, I can start assembling it all. So one of the jobs we have to do in here is we have to fit some kind of fuel tank. I don't think we're going to box it straight away, because I think it would be cool to have the back end on show with the tank, the swirl pot, the pumps. Have it on show for whilst we're doing a couple of, again, demos, shows, taking it around to show you guys at events. So yeah, let's go and pick up some aluminium. Let's start getting to the guillotine and folder, and yeah, let's start making a fuel tank. This is the fuel tank. It's the 3/4 size, which fits perfectly in the area. It's got to do, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 litre tank, which would be more than enough for this. I've put internal baffles in. By internal baffles, I mean plates like this, which are welded inside, so it can basically stop a bit of fuel slosh. You're never going to get away from it. So then as you lean forward, so we've got a Bosch 044 pump, which will be the high pressure pump, which will go off down this way and it'll feed the engine. But then we're going to get a low pressure pump around this area, which will feed the swirl pot. So main tank will feed the swirl pot will feed the high pressure pump will feed the engine. This is so fuel slosh. So when you're doing donuts and track cars and track days and all that type of thing, it's all good. We've been playing with the 3D printer, which I've had for many years. We 3D printed the bracket on the fuel pump housing, so that's all 3D printed now, so that can bolt down. But this is for the fly press. I'm going to cut a piece of aluminium circle, and then I've got a receiver tool, which is on the printer, which is printing now, and I'll press that into it, which will give the domed edge. And the reason for that, and why a lot of fabricators do this, is to weld the edge up and having a flat plate can be a bit of a nightmare. But if you've got the dome on top, like so, you've just got to weld around this lip, which is far easier because you're just joining 2 pieces together. You can get a prettier, nicer weld all the way around. Now I think that's worked. Right, that's stuck in there now. Right, give me a minute. I'll pry it out and see what we've got. So it's kind of worked. It kind of hasn't, and it's an interesting one because, again, please put in the comments anyone who's experienced with press tooling. So what it's done is it's perfectly put the curve on that I wanted, but the materials obviously had to go somewhere, but it's rippled in different places around the edge. So I've spent a good few hours messing around, so let me show you what we have discovered. So this was the one you will have seen. So as I pressed it, it's give all these ripples because I think there's too much material That's what I was guessing, and there's nowhere for it to go. So I went right down a size, 77.5. The radius wasn't enough, but it wasn't giving any ripples, giving a nice curve. So I thought, add a bit of material on, we'll go again. 82.5. It worked, but the radius again could be a little bit more and a little bit more deeper. And I think I found the sweet point. That there is give a really nice radius and give me a really nice straight edge to weld against. That's exactly what I'm looking for. This is what I'm envisioning for the top of the swirl pot. So it's easier to weld around this nice edge here than it is to weld flush. Plus you're going to get a nicer finish with the radius. So that's what we're looking for. Just got a little bit more messing around, but I'm sure I'll get it right. Next job now is, which is the one I've been kind of putting off because I didn't know how to go about it, is we started repairing the floors. So I've cut these out, which are a good 2 mil, 2.5 mil. I'm going to trim them all down until they fit perfectly in the car, and I'm going to seam them all up. So then that will reinforce this area, because obviously if you remember we had the joining pieces where they were rotten and cracked, and then I've also got these pieces to go on there, as obviously that's going to go down, which is to tie the top into the bottom as well, both sides. So again, reinforcing all this area. So let's start trimming, let's get this plate welded in, and let's start cracking on. So this is where we're up to. I always see in the comments, cut and shut, cut and shut. This is to basically reinforce and strengthen the cut line between the two vehicles. Then my next plan is I'm going to move on to this area. As much as these plates don't look very pretty, they are very, very strong, to be fair. They are very, very thick. But what I've done, because I'm a fabricator and I like it to be aesthetically pleasing, I've cut and folded some more plates, which are going to go something like, let's say like that. And then we've got one on top, which will go something like that. And then basically down the other side. Again, reinforcing this full, well, transmission tunnel, making it look a bit more aesthetically pleasing. That's the reason why I'm adding this piece in. I've started making the piece for this side. It's fell through, as you can see. Let's crack on with this side, get this tacked in, and then I can sort that L piece as well. We've kind of welded it all in now. We've welded along there, welded up this seam. I'm going to crack on with patching this little piece of floor in there with that little, this little plate, and I'm going to patch that in now. Then I think I'm going to get all the seat rails in, sorry. And then last job, I'm going to decide what I'm going to do here, because I'm still not 100% happy with how it is. So I'm going to have a good look at the area later on. But just whilst I'm thinking, crack on with that, get the seats in, and then that will be the 100% last job for metalwork on the body. The issue with seat rails are you need to make them true. And you need to make them true because obviously if you're sat in your seat, you don't want to be leaning to one side because you've welded them on an angle. And what makes this car even more harder is, because it's had a floor pan swap, what happens if your floor's 10 mil down on one side against the body? So you can't measure off the body. So the only thing I've come up with is, I have a digital angle finder. They're a couple of quid off eBay, and it'll tell you basically angles. I've used it on the geometry on the twin before now, so we're going to use that. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the magic beep like Project Binky, but it'll certainly do the job. So if you look at the dash, there is a flat plate on the dash. So I'm going to surmise that there is flat and true to basically what I would class as the chassis, the floor. And it's saying it's 10.3 degrees sloping down, sloping downwards, I would say. So what we're going to have to do is, so that means I'm going to take this then, put it on my bar, and then I'm going to work out basically that needs to come down to 10.3 degrees, and then I know that bar is true to that dash panel, and like I say, I'm surmising that that's true. So I actually read the gauge wrong because the light was flashing at it. It wasn't 10.3, it was actually 103 degrees. I put a mark on the bar and a mark on the outer edge, so every time you're linishing and shaping the ends, it always sets in the right rotation. I'm now at 104 degrees. I can't go any more down on that side, and I don't really want to go any more up on this side, because I'm getting to the point where I'm not going to be able to get a nice thick weld around this edge. Get a seat, see how it feels, and then if I'm happy with the feeling, I can completely weld it in. So I've tacked all the bars on, just tacked. I've put the little, remember the brackets which we made in the previous video on the seats. So technically it sits where it needs to sit. I'm just kind of fishing out whether I feel confident and I'm happy with the seating position. I always like to have my arms slightly bent so I can get full rotation either side. And also a flat leg when I'm pressing the brake fully, rather than it be up here. I want it fully out, same with the clutch, same with the accelerator. I want my legs to be flat as I'm driving. So for me, and my driving position, I think it's right. If I was being honest, my legs are perfect. I could do the steering wheel dropping down a little bit more, but I think by the time I'm doing them, I'm quite happy with that. The only thing I have noticed is the accelerator pedal is very much to the right, because you want, in fact it's not too bad, you know. It's not too bad if you think about it. Right, no, I'm quite happy with that. Everything's in reachable. There's no, you know, everything's in where it needs to be. So that there is all now the seat area. 2 bars welded in, the brackets for the seat harnesses welded in, for the seat brackets welded in, and yeah, and I hope the eagle-eyed people out there were thinking, he hasn't put his plate in here. Correct. Now, it wasn't a mistake. I did try, because when I tacked it on, I did cut it and try and put it in, but because these bars wanted to sit higher than the circle in the plates, it wouldn't sit flush with the floor. So I've had to kind of rejiggle and still go around the same route, but I'll show you what we've done. Made the front so that can still be tied in. We have made the rear so that can still be tied in, and then I've made this little dressing plate for the side to go on the end of the seat rails. As you can see, the back panel one sit up, tie the sill into the nice fresh plate. We've put this panel in, which will actually go that way to tie the side of the seating, because I think I didn't need to do it, but it'll just look cool when you open the door, you see the seat and you have all dimpled eyes. Because I think I've said before, who doesn't love a speed hole? And then looking down this front area, we've got this one to tie this panel in. So we've got the seating, we've put some primer on, and it is how I envisioned it. So what we've got is, all the floor's been repaired here. I've still got to tie this piece in with some spot welds, just to rebrace that. I've put the dimple dyed area in here, dimple dyed along the side of the seat, dimple dyed along this area to tie that in, and now we've got a solidly mounted seat. And if I get around the other side, the seating position is absolutely bang on for where I feel I need to be to drive it. Straight leg for the brake, straight leg for the clutch, everything straight legged as I wanted it to be. The gear stick's in a nice place, the steering wheel's in a decent place. Yeah, I'm sat straight and parallel with the steering wheel, super happy. Now it's time to get the passenger seat in, because you know what it's like when you have a son and he thinks he's a better driver than you. Well, I'm going to show him I'm the DK of this family. Drift King Beard. Oh, we're going to have some fun in this. So as I've said before, sometimes you need to get a little boost on a project where it's unnecessary work, but you want to see the end goal a little bit to make yourself feel good that you're going in the right direction. And I've just done this by putting both the seats in and putting it on the ground to basically make it a little bit more like a complete car. It's just that little bit of a boost. You know, the wheels are on the floor. You kind of get a picture of what it's going to be like. So the next job is a little easier because you feel like you're progressing forward. Definitely moving in the right direction, and it's starting to look like a Vauxhall Corsa. So I've got it outside, had the little rewards of seeing it now outside in the flesh, seeing the stance, and what can I say? Super, super happy with how it looks, and I'm super happy with the progress. We're only 10 weeks into this build, and we're already shells near enough complete, the engine's in the bay, we know we've got a running engine. All we've got now is just to crack on with some wiring and start painting before it goes off to the body shop. So, subscribe to this channel, because in the next video, this will be a running and driving car. So I'll sign this one off, guys. Take care, and I'll see you all on the next video.